What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so this was a video request from a subscriber, and they wanted me to give my thoughts on the UPN network, talk about it, guess a bit of nostalgia. And we all remember the UPN network, those of us who are older, at least 30, I'm thinking. See, maybe even 25. Let me see. No, 30. If you're 30 and older, then you remember UPN as a little kid. But when the UPN network debuted, I was in high school, so I vividly remember it during its 10, 11, 12 years of existence. And it debuted around the same time as the WB network, which I'll bring in a little bit later on. But UPN was a network that came to existence, I think, around 1995. And initially, the UPN network was trying to reach young white males. That was their demographic. Initially, that first year. The earlier programming was, if you remember, was shows like Star Trek, Voyager, and they used to broadcast a lot of WWE broadcasts, shows on that network. So their first audience, the attempted audience, was white males. But they weren't doing that well with white males. What happened was the combination of executives and show creators that were more progressive, and the network is fledgling. I mean, the network was struggling, and when you struggle, you got to go with what seems to be working. And what initially was working was shows that were apparently aimed at black audiences. I think the first show that they had that really showed some success was Moesha. All right? Moesha, of course, starred Brandy, who was a hugely popular singer at that time. And the show was set in L.A., and it depicted an upper middle class black family navigating realistic situations. And Vida Spears, who co-created Moesha with Ralph Farquhar and Sarah Finney Johnson, said, I'll put a link to this interview, or a link to this article, excuse me. There hadn't really been a show like that before where the star was a young black girl with brown skin and braids. And Sarah Finney Johnson, had always talked about how we never had a role model like that on television when we were kids. In 1999, UPN introduced a Moesha spinoff called The Parkers, also created by Farquhar, Finney Johnson, and Spears, to show about a woman, a mother and daughter who attended the same junior college, marked the acting debut of Monique, then known as a stand-up comedian. What was beautiful was that this is what Monique said. When I walked on that set and saw that blackness, that was my introduction to Hollywood. And she said, I took pride in that. The Parkers was a massive rating success, ultimately reaching syndication. Another hit for UPN at the time was the sitcom Half and Half, which premiered September 23rd, 2002. Producer Yvette Lee Bowser, who had created Living Single many years earlier, inherited the script for Half and Half about a pair of estranged half-sisters who become neighbors, and developed it into something that honestly and hilariously portrayed a modern family as I understood it and experienced it growing up. It resonated with the black audience in particular because it authentically depicted the fraught and funny dynamics so many of us who are living with bonus siblings understand. Rachel True, who starred as Mona on the show, found it rewarding to be working with a black female producer. Bowser said, this is just a show about people, and I'm not going to make you be any more or less black than you already are, recalls True. that there was room for that on the network. By that point, we hadn't seen that many black alternatives on television. In addition to prioritizing the work of black creators, UPN's programming placed bets on more symbolically significant stories. 101, which starred Flex Alexander and Kyla Pratt as a single father and his daughter, was praised for its representation of an alternative family dynamic and positive depiction of black fatherhood, in contrast to prevailing stereotypes. In its brief existence, UPN launched and nurtured careers. Mara Brock Akil began as a writer on Moesha and went on to create her own show, Girlfriends, and a spin-off, The Game. When pitching Girlfriends, Akil was inspired by the popularity of Sex and the City, but felt that the black female perspective was missing. Girlfriends was so wildly successful that it survived the merger and brought in a built-in audience over to the CW, where its final season aired in 2008. The Game ran for 3 seasons on the CW before being picked up by BET and now by Paramount Plus. But what happened? Well, on January 24, 2006, Leslie Moonves, then chairman of the CBS Corporation, and Barry Meyer, his counterpart at Warner Brothers Entertainment, held a joint news conference to announce that their respective television networks, the UPN, United Paramount Network, that's what it stands for, and the WB were struggling financially and would merge to form a new channel called the CW. Now, the thing about the CW was that it went away from the black programming that UPN had built its existence on. The new network essentially took on the identity of the WB, and the WB had already been moving away from black-themed programs like, the Wayans brothers. They had already been doing that. So, many people believe that the decision to merge UPN out of existence came down to ad revenue. And I'm trying to figure out who this is. One executive says, ultimately you want the most dollars that you can get for your ads. Though UPN's black-led scripted shows were largely popular with audiences, advertisers were evidently less inclined to pay top dollar to support shows targeting black viewers. Farquhar, co-creator of Moesha and the Parkers, recalls an advertising person saying, "We're not interested in downscaled demographics." So that's pretty much what happened, man. And to give you an idea about what happened, like when we really knew that they were finished with black shows. I remember the now merged WB and UPN CW, right? They had this sitcom. Not sitcom, I don't want to call it a sitcom. They had this show called Underground, right? And it was about the Underground Railroad. And it was very, very, intense. Like, they didn't sugarcoat much at all. And I remember a particular scene where the actress that was portraying the plantation owner's mistress, who was a slave, she got revenge for the plantation owner taking the life of her kid for political reasons. He was announcing a campaign for governor. I forgot which state they were in, but it was a southern state, obviously. And let's just say it might have been Mississippi or something. I can't remember. And that he had a reputation that was hurting him, that he was too soft on his slaves, too soft on black people. And this was hurting his chances to win election in this extraordinarily racist state. right? Where white supremacy reigned supreme. So when he announced his bid for governor, his candidacy, her son had ran away, and he had assured her that he would not punish the child too severely, not take his life. He went back on that. And while he announced that he was running, in the background, the son was up by his throat. And you know what I mean by that. He was dead. And if I recall correctly, the people in the audience were shooting at the corpse. Then he, said how broke up he was about it, blah, 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 blah. But when I saw that her and the butler conspired to take him by the neck and hang him in his own cellar, I think it was, I said, yeah, this show not going to be on TV too much longer. I said, white folks not going to like that. And sure enough, it was announced that, and I think the show was critically acclaimed, and I think the ratings was pretty good, but it was canceled. And most people believe it was because the network's parent company, Tribune Media, at the time was attempted to be purchased by a conservative corporation named Sinclair Broadcasting Group. And basically, they announced that the cover was that they were going to change their broadcasting. Because they still had some edgy shows like that, but afterwards, they didn't have any more of those types of shows. For at least last time I watched CW, because I haven't really watched CW in years. That was the last time. But they announced they was going to change their type of the approach of their programming. But most people believe they took that down because the parent company did not want any show showing something like that. You know what I'm saying? Oh, they don't mind seeing us get, but that, they didn't like that. They didn't like any of that. You know what I'm saying? They didn't want to be reminded of that type of stuff going on. Because the show was pretty realistic, except for the fact that the music was modern day hip hop. But yeah, that's when I knew that any little semblance of UPN was gone. So this is a real brief rundown of the UPN network that had a great run for about 10 or 11 years. But this is the pattern that we often see. These networks will build their base or build themselves off of black audiences, but ultimately they will betray these audiences once they aspire to get that top dollar. They'll build themselves off of us, but then they'll change the programming when it's convenient and go for the top dollar, those top advertising dollars, the market that they feel is the most coveted. And I'm not talking about the Martin audience, I'm talking about the Seinfeld audience. And I'm not knocking Seinfeld, I love Seinfeld, but you know what I mean. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.